we're going to talk about structure versus texture and which one needs to come first. It's a very simple concept but very effective. Hi, welcome to 2022. Happy New Year! As you know, I've been missing in action for a couple of weeks. I've been away in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, actually in a town called Klang, where my parents are still living. I haven't seen them for almost 2 years and it was really good to see them. And of course, when I was traveling, I didn't manage to post any videos, but I did take lots of footages, so let's see whether I can edit them and make them into some story for you later on. Today though, I just want to get back into the making of videos. I just want to talk about something very simple. I noticed that lots of beginners, like to go into the texture before they, look at the structure. So I suggest that in this video that you should be in the proper sequence, do structure then texture, and I'll illustrate it with a simple sketch so that you get the idea of what I mean by structure texture. So avoid doing texture structure, but rather get your structure right and then you can put in the texture. It's a lot more fun and it's a lot more efficient. Let's go. Okay, let's talk about what makes structure. In my mind, these are the things that makes the structure of my sketch. First of all, the lines, the shape, and then of course the form. The form is made primarily out of shadows, and in a flat surface you create the simulation of shadows in the form of gradation, and also using contrast or having light shade moment on your piece of sketched. As you can see shortly, I'm going to give you a demo that I'm going to try to go with a texture first and then the structure, which is the first part of a demo. And you will see that there will be some problems that arises with this approach. So let me repeat. The idea of structure is to use line, shape, and shadows, which essentially gives you form. That is what I mean by structure. If you get that big picture right, the tiny details, the little things that, for example, in this case, you will see the drawings on the teacup and the plate. Those are texture. The little bubbles on the tea, those are texture. What you want to get right is the big picture, the big shape, and they consist mostly of lines, shapes, and form, which most of the time will be shadow. So this first demo, I'm going to go in with texture first. The texture would be the drawing, which of course intrigue and attracts most beginners. This is where you will start. Before you even paint the structure, you will want to paint the texture. By doing texture first, of course it's very nice, it's very detailed, it's very elaborate, and so on and so forth. But as you will see later, when you put in the structure, there are some issues that arise, which is very common, a problem that most beginners will face. So as you can see, the textures is coming along nicely. Now we're going to put in the structure. Like I said, the structure would be the gradation, the shadows that makes the cup looks three-dimensional. And as we paint over our texture, you see a couple of problems. One, you will see that the textures are disappearing because unless you used highly staining colors and they are waterproof, which most watercolor pigments are not, they will soften and disappear. Of course, unless that's what you want. But in most cases, that's not what you want. You want to keep the texture fresh. Okay, the second demo, I'm going to draw essentially the same teacup. The lines, the shape will be more or less the same thing. But I'm going to do the structure first. In other words, I'm going to try to get the big shapes of shadows and gradation of the cup to make it three-dimensional, ignoring the details or the texture for now. Ignoring the texture means that you are going to brush over it This is a very simple demo, so don't, pardon my simplistic approach to it. But as you can see, I'm trying to get the big idea right, the big broad shadows right, and also the big broad shapes and gradation right. So at this point, you will see your eyes will see the three-dimensional sense of the teacup and the plate. That's what you want. You want to create a structure. It's like the scaffolding for a building. You want to put up the building first before you put in the paint and the little ornaments and so on and so forth. Now, after the structure has dried, I'm going to go over with all my texturing. In this case, all the drawings of the plant and so on and so forth. Of course, I change a little bit of the lightness. Where there's light, I use a lighter version. When there's dark, I use a darker version for the decoration. But you can see that the details are kept intact because I'm not going to wash over the texture at this point. I have already laid the foundation of the structure. So structure, texture is what I'm doing in the demo number 2. The first one was texture, structure, and hence the sketch is a little bit more muddy than it needs to be. So up close, first sketch, muddy texture, and the second one, you will see that the texture is a lot more obvious with the structure at the back in place. Of course, it's always possible to touch up your sketch if you have done texture then structure and you smudged up all the little texture because you put on shadows and so on and so forth. But it is so much more efficient if you focus on structure first, then the texture. It's how I think about things, right? You always start with the big picture and then only you go into the detail. It is a lot more efficient that way. I hope that this tip helps you in some way. You take care and stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, bye.